Hi, and welcome to the Winter 17 Developer Preview Live. What we're going to do today is go over some of the really great features that are coming out in Winter 17. And to do that, we've got a panel of product owners, and we'll get to their names in just a moment. One of the reasons why we're doing this is because reading release notes and things like that can be pretty dry, but actually seeing these new things in action really bring it home. So what we're going to do is we're going to present these demos to you, and at the same time, we want to engage you in a conversation. So we're enabling a Q&A via Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, you can use the hashtag Salesforce Live to ask us questions. Also, if you're a member of the Success community, you can post your questions there, also using the Salesforce Live hashtag. Now, one of the things that we like to do on the broadcast is really get the owners of the products in front of you so that they can talk about the products. And we're going to go ahead and start on the left here with Marcus. Why don't you introduce yourselves?
Good morning, Salesforce developer community. I'm Marcus Torres, and I'm a product owner both on Lightning Platform and mobile.
I'm Srinivas Araru. I am the product manager for Lightning Global Components on the platform.
Hello, I'm Kamiyar Surajvar, and I'm a product manager on Lightning Foundation, and I'm responsible for actions.
And I'm Margaret Francis. I'm a product manager at Heroku, and I focus on data and ecosystem.
That's great. Thanks a lot. So this session will be recorded, so if you can't sit through all of it or you want to go back and look at some of it later, you can certainly do that. Again, we're focusing on developer features today. Next week, we'll be doing release readiness for the Sales Cloud on Wednesday and also for the Service Cloud on Thursday. To be able to go see that, you can go to www.salesforce.com/release readiness for additional information. Now, before we get started, there's one piece of housekeeping that I'd like to do, and that is talk about forward-looking statements. So here at Salesforce, we like to make sure that you're making your buying decisions based on anything that is generally available and not anything that we might talk about as being possibly in future features. So very simple, actually. So let's go ahead and get started. Marcus, what have you got to show us today?
Thanks, Dave. Well, I'm going to first start with something we call the Lightning Data Service. And what this really is a standard controller for Lightning. And for many of our developers that are out there today, the standard controller, that term they may be familiar with Visualforce, and it's a very easy way to get a lot of our benefits of essentially CRUD operations and general record handling with very little effort. And as our development community is built, our varying Lightning components or custom Lightning components, this is a crucial piece that we think is going to help them do or develop much quicker. And so that's what I'm going to go through today. So as any kind of new modern UI framework, it's a component-based framework, Lightning is obviously. But if you look at any kind of given page in the Lightning experience, for example, the one that's on my screen right now is Record Home. And you have a varying set of components. You have something called the Highlights component at the top. You have the Detail component, and off the screen, there's a bunch of other components, and they're all referencing the same data, right? So you have this same exact account information reused over various pieces of components or various components. Well, today, those components actually maintain their own single copy of that data. And so each one of those components essentially has its own controller, and each one of those components goes and fetches the same exact data over and over again.
Seems wasteful.
Very wasteful. And you know, it's also really hard, not really hard, but it adds a layer of complexity for our developers to actually keep all of these components refreshed and essentially consistent, have that data consistency if one of them changes that data. And of course, our developer community has to actually write Apex and Sockle and a bunch of server-side controllers in addition to their just pure JavaScript component, right? And so we said, we probably should get rid of this for them. And so this is where the Lightning Data Service comes in. So I'm first going to illustrate how kind of multiple components request the same data today. So you have kind of component 1, component 2, component 3. And each of them are getting that same exact record. Now, one component may be getting 3 fields, the second component may be getting the entire layout, and the third component may be getting a different set of fields, but it's kind of a combination of everything. And so we really want to, if you look at what each one of those requests looks like, the component, sorry for that formatting flaw here, that component we'll call a component controller. That's purely client side. And then that controller will actually call Salesforce into an Apex controller, usually has SOCL in that controller, which will then essentially talk to our database, right? In the cloud. And then of course all that gets returned, and then you have to handle that all client side.
And a lot of times there's not even a ton of logic necessarily in that controller. It's just returning data.
Exactly. But one thing to note is because Lightning doesn't have field level security and kind of overall kind of access checks, unless you're leveraging some of our kind of base components for some of the data handling, you have to do it all yourself. And there's plenty of people today on whether it's Stack Exchange or our own developer community that have written hundreds of lines of code that is almost become boilerplate now to do some of these access checks. And so if you look, you have a bunch of custom code. But in the new world, we really want you to use the force record, right? So this is what we're dev previewing in winter 17, so this October. And this component is essentially the standard controller for Lightning. So I want to kind of walk you through some of the changes. So quickly, if you look at that same example of multiple components requesting the same data, you have those 3 components. They all use force record. All of those go through a single standard controller. And instead of each component having its own copy of the data, now they all have essentially a pointer or a reference to a single shared record within the client-side cache. And then we handle all the back and forth with Salesforce from client to server. And so what's the benefits of this? No Apex or SOCL. That's awesome.
Yeah, don't be too hard on Apex and SOCL. I mean, they're very useful.
For sure. And, in all honesty, when it comes to certain logic or if they want to apply certain logic server side, Apex and SOCL are a great option. But what we're really trying to do is lower the bar for a lot of people that just want to have a very quick kind of customization of their UI in Lightning and don't really want to deal with having to write something just for data retrieval and CRUD operations.
Yeah, which is probably the largest use case or set of demands that people have. And so this makes it easy for them.
Exactly. That's how a lot of people actually start when it comes to customizations, is they just try to do something very, very simple, right? And so we automatically handle the record handling to and from Salesforce. We take care of all CRUD operations, and we respect field level security and other access checks. So you don't have to do that anymore, which is pretty huge.
Now that's a win. That is definitely a win.
The other thing that's really cool is the data consistency stays the same across components, because the second we get an update from one component, say there is an operation, we get a response back from the server. Because we only update that single record and every component shares just a pointer to that record, everything is automatically updated, which is pretty awesome. Components can now be entity agnostic, so when you write an Apex controller, it's kind of specific to the object. So now with force record, you don't have to. And we handle automatic caching, so things are available offline. So I'm going to come back to that slide, but I'm going to switch to my demo. And let's go through it. So, in a lot of cases, when you're working on, say, an account, you have a list of contacts, but you really want to just be able to do things very, very quickly. So maybe I want to put a create form to create a new contact right there on the screen, right? So typically how we'd ask somebody to do this today is I've kind of mocked this up. So I would have, and this component uses Apex, so I just want to kind of walk everyone through it. So this kind of displays a list of contacts, and then here's an area where I would create a new contact. But of course, that has a client-side controller, has a init function, a create function. Because you're not leveraging force record, you have to do a bunch of field validation yourself. And so I didn't bother putting that here, but that could be quite a bit of code. And of course, maybe you're going to have a helper class, and that helper class is then eventually going to call essentially the server-side controller or the Apex controller, which I have here. And again, this is very simplistic, just for the purposes of today's demo. But this function essentially does sockle, and it returns a bunch of contacts. And then this one saves the contact through a simple upsert. But if you notice here, there should be lots and lots of code here to do access checks related to CRUD and field level security. So what does that really look like with force records? So now I had 4 files there. I had a server-side controller, I had a helper file, I had my client-side controller, and I had my component. Well, in the new world, kind of using force record, and for Winter 17, it's called force record preview. I'll go into that in a little bit. But it's very simple. All I do is I essentially have a markup that says, force record preview. And I have a bunch of input fields right here where I reference kind of first name, last name, email, and I call a save record. Now on the actual client-side controller, so again, no need for a server-side controller, I have a very simple init function, and then if you look here in my save record, I actually have a component method that's part of force record that says save record. And you essentially call that, you get all the FLS, you get all the kind of access checks, and we just manage everything for you.
I think that's also interesting because up until now, it seems that when we think about components, we don't think about them as actually having methods or functions that you can call on the components, that they're just much more static and kind of self-contained. And so it's actually pretty cool to see that in this one.
Yeah, and actually another one of our methods right up here during the init is what we call get new record. So this essentially references, it's called new contact record create, which essentially is the ID I gave force record. And when you call that get new record, what it is, it's essentially giving the full template infrastructure for creating a new record. So it's almost like if you hit the new button and you get the form. That's what this kind of structure does. Again, it's just another force record component method that's available to our community. We also have delete record and kind of full CRUD operations. And that's it. That's all I need. I don't have a helper. I don't have a style. I mean, I guess I could put a style. But all of that stuff is essentially handled for you with very little code. And the way our general tools are going is a bunch of this boilerplate stuff is the minute you use force record, it would automatically populate this for you. So you don't really even have to write any of this yourself. Again, forward-looking statement. Now, so let's just see what this really looks like, right? So here, I'm back on my account page. I'm gonna edit the page, which brings up the Lightning App Builder. I'm gonna grab my custom component right here, and I'm gonna put it onto the page. I'm gonna save it. And I'm going to go ahead and go back. And you can see here, I'll create a very quick contact. And I did something very simple, right? I just simply said, create this contact and throw an alert, right? I did it very simply. But what this shows is the power of essentially the force record. And if you look here, you can see that Marcus Lightning was created and everything was kind of respected. So that record now exists. So very cool stuff. We're pretty excited. We hope the developer community is also excited about having a standard controller for Lightning. And in Winter 17, we're really looking for as much feedback as possible because we really plan to have a bigger release and kind of open it up to everyone in the next release after that or two. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I was going to say, I wonder how many Lightning components weren't built that had a very simple use case like that, just because of having to, again, write another Apex controller and deal with a SOCL statement. So things like this, I think, is really going to help explode the number of components that people are able to build quickly.
Yeah, we think so too. So one gotcha for Winter 17 is in Winter 17, you're going to have to use the tag force record preview. I know you don't like it. We don't like it. And sorry about that. There's a long reason for it, but just trust us.
I think it's great. And the reason why it's great is because we don't have to wait.
Yeah.
You can use force record preview instead of waiting until force record is completely nailed down. So that's great.
There is another reason you don't need to wait, and I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
It's true. And so in Spring 17, we'll be changing that to just force record. Some things that are on our roadmap is not just fetching a single record, but a collection of records. For example, what if you want to build a component custom kind of list with a set of records? So that's coming, as well as server triggered updates. So if somebody else changes the record in Salesforce, we'll stream those updates directly to the client. So
Now that's pretty cool.
that is pretty cool. No more XHRs all over the place happening. It's just everything's kind of streaming down. And then kind of proactive loading of records. This is essentially kind of priming the pump to make that experience faster and faster. And we want to see you at Dreamforce. So I'm going to be hosting a session on Tuesday, October 4th at 4:30. So come check it out. Meet the entire Lightning Data Service team. And really explore this in more detail. And then we'll also be featured in the developer keynote on Thursday at 11 a.m. So looking forward to seeing you. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over here to Srinivas Aruru to talk about another great innovation in Lightning Platform that's going to help our developers.
Well, I've got one quick question from the Q&A from Carl Brundage. And the question is, what is the migration path from force record preview to force record once force record is available?
Yeah, it's the migration path is you really just got to go in and remove preview.
It's kind of search and replace, right?
Yeah, it's a search and replace.
Or refactoring, let's call it.
Yeah, I always don't like the word refactor, so I'm going to say search and replace.
Okay, all right, thanks a lot. Srini, why don't you give us a heads up on what you're working on?
So I'm excited to talk about what we are coming out in Winter 17. We are coming out with a new set of foundational components. We want to let our customers, partners, ISVs, customize their Lightning experience, desktop and mobile, and also enhance their experience. To do that, we are introducing a new set of building block global components. And when I say building block, they're utility components like label, badge, icon. There are navigation components like menu, tab. There are input components which support almost all types of inputs, output components. So almost any component that you could use to build your experience around a single record, a CRUD operation. And this plays well with what Marcus just talked about because it's going to enhance. The components that he showed were the UI components, and I'm going to show with the Lightning components, the new Lightning components. So there are four things we concentrated on. The first important thing was it should be easy to adopt. So what we did was we patterned it after HTML components, and which means the learning curve is really small. A lot of the attributes are very similar to HTML or same. They behave similarly. So that makes it very easy for anybody who knows HTML to be able to adopt them. The next thing is we componentized it, which means you can have components composed within components and build your experience components. And each of these components are self-contained in their own way. And I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. We wanted our customers to do minimal CSS. So you don't have to work with HTML or CSS as less as possible. So our components have adopted the SLDS markup. That's Salesforce Lightning Design System markup. Mm-hmm. And the best thing is, as the design system evolves, our components also would evolve with that. So there's not going to be any breakages. So you don't have to worry about it. The customers don't have to worry about it.
So today, when you're building Lightning components or building with Lightning, if you want SLDS, you used to have to bring it in as a static resource. I think also we introduced a property or an interface that you could implement, which would bring in the CSS. With this, you don't need any of that stuff.
You don't have to do any of that stuff.
Fantastic. That's really great.
And if you want to still customize the standard SLDS design, then we give you a way to
Still
do
have that option.
You still have that option, yes. The best thing is it's accessible by design. So
That's huge.
That's huge, yes.
I think a lot of people, well-intentioned, but accessibility really is not one of the priorities for most developers when they're developing web applications, which is unfortunate. But having this folded in automatically for you is fantastic.
Yes, and the components take care of that for our customers. I'm going to talk about 3 components, and I'll start with Lightning Input. The input component, I'm going to point you to the example below. So by just putting a name and a label, you'll get an input text component. The default type is text, very similar to HTML. We also support email, password, telephone, URL, number, checkbox, radio, date time. And I'm going to show examples of how they will look. But as you see, it's very simple. It's all styled, no HTML here. It's just that simple line. That's it. The second example I'm going to show is it says type toggle, which is a variant of the checkbox. Toggle works well in the mobile environment, which means all these components not only work on desktop, but also work in mobile. We take care of that for you. That's a huge plus for our customers.
That is a huge plus. And so in the case of the checkbox, for instance, is it actually rendering a different set of HTML on mobile than it is on the desktop?
It is rendering a different set of, it's styled differently.
Right. Okay. That's pretty good too.
Yeah. So
this is all really great.
The checkbox and toggle on mobile, with the touch experience, the toggle works better. Mm-hmm. It's less irritating than the checkbox. That's it. But functional-wise, they're the same. The third example I like to show, and this is actually my favorite thing to show, is yes, if you can see in the second example, you have checked equals true, or sorry, rather required equals true, which does a bit more than just putting that red dot there. The third example, you have a pattern. What this means is our components do required and data type validation on the client. So when our customers use these components and enter the wrong data type or the wrong pattern for a telephone or for an email, it'll immediately say it's wrong. So what that does is our customers avoid adding bad data to their orgs, which is a huge problem, and our customers constantly complain about it. So this automatically takes care of it on the client side. It saves the server trip, which Marcus is really trying to save at this point.
That's true.
Next, I'll talk about how our components are self-contained and how they are composed within each other. So in the example, you see a button group. A button group basically, with a menu, by the way. A button group basically contains a menu item, which is composed inside a button menu, which has a set of buttons. In this case, it's refresh, edit, and save. And all of this is a button group. And each of these is self-contained and works independently really well. So you can have a button menu, which is that little down arrow icon with a menu overflow. The button works independently by itself. But when you put it all together, it still works. The reason this is important is you can build your experience component using the same pattern. Our foundational components are built using the same pattern. What this does is it drives reusability, which is a very important differentiator for these components.
Yeah, I can see that reusability is kind of the holy grail of component-based development, right? So that's really good too.
It's got a huge multiplying factor, which helps.
Yep.
The third example I want to show is Lightning Card. Lightning Card is a container which you can, which has got a header, a body, and a footer. It's got a button in one on the right corner. It's an action button. Like I said in the earlier thing, you can put a button, you can put a button group, you can put a button menu, all of that works. The body can have any information. It can have a single record-based information. It can have a table. The only difference between the three containers that you see is the variant. The first variant is the default variant base, which works well for large form factors. The second one is narrow. The third one is compact, which works well for small form factors. What I want to drive here is this very less HTML or CSS our customers have to do. The component takes care of it, but they get a container which works in different form factors. So that's a huge plus for our customers.
Well, what's great about it is with the addition of a simple attribute like variant, you've basically saved rebuilding a whole page just for a different form factor.
Yes, and we use the same pattern with the attribute name variant all across our components. So you will see this variant being used again and again, and it's basically a variation of the same base component.
Yeah, and you can think of a button, right? They might have many variants. One stays down because it's kind of more of a stateless or stateful button. It might be
an
a
inverse
default,
variant.
an inverse, all kinds of different things.
Yes.
And that's controllable with a simple single attribute.
Yes, and that changes how your page looks and changes how your experience, your call to action in your experience. In Winter 17, like I told earlier, these are the set of components that we are releasing. Some of them are beta. Beta means we're still supporting them. There are some functionalities which we need to finish, and we are working towards finishing that in this release. With that, I am going to show a quick demo. I am going to play on Marcus's demo, which he showed earlier, where I'm going to replace sorry, Marcus. I need to all right, so what I'm going to show is a little section playing off on Marcus's demo where I can create a contact, and then I can have the same contact in a larger form factor, and it's in a tab set, which is also one of the components we're releasing. But if you can think about it as this is an accounts page, so you can create a contact in another tab, you can create a case, you can create an opportunity in another tab, so this can keep going on, enhancing your Lightning experience. So I'm just going to immediately show, well, I'll show the dev. So if you see here, first I'll show you the example of an input component, a simple input. The two required things are name and label, which has required equals true. And the value is basically what is using Marcus's data service. It's just got 3 fields, very small, very many. It's got first name, last name, and email. The controller is very similar, the same almost. Again, using data service, which makes it a lot easier. Our larger example uses a lot more fields. We let you customize some of the error messages that you throw on the client side. Mm-hmm. So when the message is too long, when the message value is missing, you can write your own error message, your custom error message. So like I said, it's very similar to HTML. It's very simple to use, but that does not mean it doesn't have a rich feature set. It still has a rich feature set. So that was our goal. The pattern example that I talked about earlier. The one thing I like to this is using the card, and the variant is the base, which is the default, which is shows the larger card. And here the variant is narrow, again the container. I'm using a simple button in the first case. In the second, I'm using a button group, all composed within each other. And this is all in a tab component, which is the container.
What I like looking at that code is I can't help but think about SLDS, which is the Lightning Design Service. It's great, but without these kind of components, you have code that begins to nest really deeply because you're basically setting up the structure of the document yourself to support the CSS. And in this case, looking at this code, it's super easy to read because you don't have all those nested divs and all these other elements that are required to properly achieve that Lightning design experience. So
yes,
that's really cool.
It's really cool. So we have taken care of almost all the CSS. Dave, you brought up a very good point. So two little things there are a couple of things which we are still giving you the flexibility. What you see here is text align and padding. It's basically padding the input component from the edge and aligning the label to either of the corners or center. This gives our customers the flexibility to do it, and we're not attributing it because it's just going to complicate it, and this is a lot more easier to do it. So as you can see, there is minimal CSS. And what you get out of this is all right.
Your component looks a lot better than mine.
Thank you.
You should have used base components.
I should have.
Next time.
Next time.
All right. So client-side validation. Dave, you missed it. Save. Oh. The larger form factor. Demo gods, I thought we were going to make this work. It's a little this thing in my demo. But the larger form factor, and here's the checkbox that I talked about earlier with the button group.
Well, I think that's a great demo. One of the things that is kind of becoming a theme, hopefully you've noticed this, is that Lightning Components is seeing a lot of energy from within Salesforce. Combining the base components with the data services really is amping up the ability for developers to be able to build components reliably, quickly, accessibly, all of these things, which is, I think, going to be really amazing. Don't forget, we're going to be talking about a lot of this at Dreamforce this year. Was there another
I was just going to
part of the demo, or?
No, the demo is done. I was just going to
Okay.
quickly talk about what we are releasing in the future.
Yeah. Let's see that.
So the theme for our Spring 17 is to basically go in depth into some of our single record-based experience that I talked about, but also to go on a collection for a collection-based component. So something like a list, and also go for try to have a multi-layered experience. So modal is another thing that we are thinking about.
Right.
All within. These are all forward-looking.
Yes, of course.
Of course.
And fingers crossed, probably going to happen, but we can't guarantee it.
Yes.
Now, are these components going to be auto-integrated with the Lightning Data Service?
What does that mean?
For example, your list component, will it kind of embed Lightning Data Service as part of the component itself?
It's a very good idea, and that's doable, yes. Yeah. If it is not force preview.
Don't worry, we're working on it, right, Kamiar?
We are.
All right.
We are going to get that done.
I have a session in Dreamforce. I'll be able to talk about the components that you saw. I also have another container component called Layout, which lets you lay out your page, and I'll be able to show that during that.
That's great. We do have some questions coming in on the Twitters. So there's a question here about plans for a file upload component? Thank you, Alejandro, for the question. So any plans on a file upload component?
A file select is something that we wanted to have in winter 17. It fell below the line. It's one of the first things that we were trying to get out in spring 17. What file select does, it lets you select a file from your local machine. And then what you do on the server side after that is all, it's like before.
Yeah.
It also lets you drag and drop. So
so that's on the roadmap.
That's on the roadmap.
For sure. Got another question from Kid Nikki. Are the new Lightning input and card components completely extensible?
So we're going to a model where we're trying to, very good question, by the way. We're going to a model where we want our developers to compose, and we don't want them to extend. So we don't. So they're composable, but we don't think we want to let them extend.
That's kind of why we're starting from this foundational component layer on the initial release of these base components.
Yes.
And then looking at more, complex
experience or complex
experience-based components
right.
later, so that we can. So those experience-based components are taking advantage of all these foundational components, just as any external developer would do.
Yes. The idea is each of these components should be self-contained. So we don't want anybody to introspect into these components. And that's one of the reasons why we don't want to support an extending model. So we want them to compose. So that's the goal.
Fantastic. Well, I hope that answers the question. Okay, we'll take one more question on this. This is from Sarabdeep03. So is there any chance that we could get a lookup-based component?
Sarabdeep03 is a beautiful Twitter handle. It should be #7 or something.
007?
007, yes. A lookup-based component is something which is on our roadmap. It is a very important, useful, also very challenging, complex component. Unless we can get some of these foundational components out, trying to tackle a lookup component is not a great idea. So the list is one of the building blocks for a lookup.
Right.
So a list helps you with the autocomplete experience, and so unless we can get the list out, the lookup might not come.
So that's good news. A lookup component, I think, would be very well received.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. So before we run out of time, I want to make sure that we keep going. And so, Kamiyar, what have you got for us today?
Well, we're here to talk about Lightning Actions. And like many of you who just watched Marcus and Srini talk about all the good things that they've been working on, when I sat there and heard these, I'm like, how can I tap into what these guys are building? Because it is great. It really is. And if we go to the next slides, I want to talk about actions. One of the interesting things about actions is that they're supported both in our existing classic UI, as well as our mobile app and the new desktop. So the challenge for us is, how do we keep everybody happy? How do we keep everything as much as we can working in all these different surfaces? And so when I heard their roadmap and their plans, I was actually really excited, and I thought we need to bring this to our Actions customers and our Actions developers. But before we deep dive into Lightning Actions, I want to just kind of give everyone an overview of the overall Actions and all the ones that are already supported and working in Lightning.
Actions have been a core part of what we deliver for a long, long time.
They are. I mean, for those of you who remember our Dreamforce, I think 13, where we introduced Salesforce One. The quick actions were a big part of that keynote. Some of you may remember the plus button and all the great things that quick actions do. And I've highlighted some of the great use cases for quick actions. We are giving everyone the opportunity to, in a declarative way, create records, update records. But we also wanted to give our developers the power that they're used to having. So we enabled use cases such as being able to create a visual force page and expose those as actions, as well as create a canvas page for those developers that already have a platform that's not necessarily on top of Salesforce platform. We wanted to minimize development for them so that they can bring their features to our mutual customers. And then we have the custom URL buttons and links that have been around for a really long time. They weren't initially supported in Lightning and Salesforce One, but a couple of releases ago, we opened up some of those use cases, so now some work. And that's great. I think a lot of customers were happy about that. But we're here to talk about Lightning Actions. So let's just get in there and start talking about Lightning Actions. So why am I so excited about Lightning Actions? Well, again, if you look at our roadmap in terms of the things that we're making possible for developers through the things that Srini is doing at the foundation level and Marcus is doing with client-side development, it's really powerful. And what I wanted to do and what our team wanted to do is bring that power to actions so that they can start working in mobile and in desktop. So that's really key. You can build a Lightning component like you do, just like we saw throughout this presentation, and then you can associate that with the action. And from there, it's just like any other action that you're used to seeing in our various surfaces. They will show up. Obviously, because these are Lightning, they won't work in our classic UI, but that's okay.
But it kind of
the
feels
future.
like the actions were almost the final frontier. Star Trek turned 50 or something.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
The
I
final
prefer Star
frontier.
Wars, but that's just
The final frontier for a place that you could bring Lightning components to bear as a developer.
Absolutely.
We start with Visual Force, of course, the page layouts, and so finally now we have the ability to bring Lightning component technology to actions.
Yes, and I'm sure there's a lot of our audience who are sitting there saying, that's right, because I used to do a lot of these things with JavaScript buttons. And so in our classic UI, the JavaScript buttons are a way to do client-side development. And I know because I've talked to many of our customers and many of our partners who use JavaScript buttons in their orgs, in their packages. They're powerful, they love them. And we wanted to give them a new tool, a better tool. And I say that because, again, referring to what these guys were talking about, we are making this super easy. It's going to be easier to do this than to write JavaScript. And we're going to provide that through actions in Lightning Experience to our customers and to our partners. So I'm really excited and I want to show it to you. So I'm going to switch over and just do a quick demo of actually how this is achievable. Okay.
Sounds good.
So here's a Salesforce org. It's my demo org. I've already gone to setup. For this demo, I set up a custom object called case study. And if you go to the actions for case study, you can see how we have our existing actions, and I will point you to the one that's called create test user because that's of type Lightning component. Excellent. But how did we get here? Let me show you quickly through the new action button. So this is just like creating any quick actions. For those of you who know how to create quick actions, this is really familiar. For those of you who do not, please start using quick actions. They're awesome. So you start like any other quick action, and in the action type, we now have a new member in this list called Lightning component. And when you choose a Lightning component action, we will present you with a list of Lightning components that have been tagged to work as an action. I will cover that a little bit further in the demo, but we are implementing a couple of interfaces in a Lightning component that identifies it as one that can be used with a quick action. And I'll show you that again in a minute. So in this case, we have 3 components in our org setup, and you can pick any of them. We have claim case, Twilio send SMS component that we've made, and a create user. The one I'm going to show you is create user. So you are going to select your Lightning component, give it a label and a name, and I'm not going to go through that because of the fact that we already have some of these. So back to the one that we've already created, let's go take a look at what's behind the scenes. So if we go to this create user action, we can then explore the Lightning component that is associated with it, and we can go to our developer console. That's how you get there. This should not be anything new because we just saw Marcus and Srini show us this. So I'm not going to go through the details of how to build the Lightning component. It's the exact same thing. It's just that, as I mentioned a second ago, we are implementing a couple of new interfaces. One, which is what we're using here, is called Lightning Quick Action without header. And there's another one that is just Lightning Quick Action, which implies that it does have a header. And again, the header is basically the standard save and cancel button that you would get with quick actions. Works very similar to how we do it for Visualforce quick actions. So if you're familiar with those, that's how this works. The other interface that you see there being implemented has record ID. So because these components aren't embedded on a record page, we need to tell it which record is being invoked from, right? And if you're familiar with quick actions, we support a couple of different varieties of quick actions, right? We have the entity-specific or object-specific quick actions that are tied to things like opportunities, account cases, custom objects. And then we have global ones, which are basically freeform. You can launch them from our global publisher menu, and they don't necessarily have to be tied to a specific record. But at any rate, as you can see, this is really, really simple to set up. You add this, you already have Lightning components that you might want to convert to actions, perfectly fine. In case you want them to now be available in Salesforce 1, this is a way to do that. And so let's go take a look at what this looks like. So here I am on the case study sample record. And when you create your quick action, you have to add it to your page layout actions list. Again, if you're familiar with it, I'm not going to go through that step. It's very simple. We've done that already, so the action shows up on this record page. And when you click it, there it is. So here's a very, very simple component that we built, not as cool and elegant as some of the things you saw, but that's the idea. And as, for example, what Srini was saying, we have tools available to you that let you implement things that validate client side. So if it's an email address and I'm trying to set up an email and I forgot to, actually put in an email address, it'll pop up an error and tell you. So I think it's a great tool. I've spoken with some customers just actually recently. They reached out to me. They said, well, we want to migrate to Lightning experience. We have some of these JavaScript buttons. What do we do with them? And I said, well, I have some news for you. We have these Lightning actions. I showed it to him, and he's like, you just gave me Christmas in August. So I thought that was really
I
great.
think
in October.
Well, yes, thank you, Marcus.
I think David Fanner from Twitter agrees with you. He's telling us that Lightning Actions is the most awaited function. And he's also wondering, do they work with macros? And I'm not sure what a macro is, but basically they work with Lightning components.
Exactly.
Right? So
Yep.
whatever you can do in Lightning components,
You could do it
the
through
action will pop that up. Seems like a great shortcut for developers to, bring some modal dialoguage into the applications that they're building, which is pretty cool.
Right. Okay. So let's go back to the presentation and recap what we just talked about and showed you. So here it is, a little bit bigger than on the demo screen. I listed the the interfaces that you can simply implement in your excuse me, in your existing or new Lightning components. So Lightning quick action without header, really simple. If we go to the next slide, we can talk about, again, why they're awesome. So I've already touched on some of these points as I was doing the demo, but it's just fun to recap. Again, this is a way for you to build client-side actions as a way to migrate your JavaScript buttons to Lightning experience. They are also a great way for our partners to build third-party integration. I actually know a lot of customers that build their own integrations to third-party systems. This would work with that. You can also leverage them the way you would do with Visualforce. And I again want to highlight the fact that they are supported both on desktop and mobile. And we all love Salesforce 1. And so everything that we do obviously is mobile first. And this just goes to show you that we're committed to that and keep on working on features that deliver on that. So that really summarizes the conversation I wanted to have about actions.
Great. It's I think most people would agree with me that this release has so much stuff for developers. And like we said, some of it's in preview and some of it's in beta, but just seeing the direction that we're going, I think is going to really make the hearts warm of our developer audience. You let us know for sure.
So one last plug.
Yes.
As everybody has been saying, Dreamforce is coming up. Come see us. I have many, many sessions dedicated to actions because I know how important they are to everybody. There's a breakout session with some guest presenters who are going to come talk to you about their experiences. You're going to meet our team. I'm at our Lightning Lookout Theater twice a day talking about actions. So come find us. I would love to meet everybody individually and talk to them about their experiences, their challenges, what they're excited about. So with that.
Well, Dreamforce is a great opportunity for doing that for sure.
Yeah.
And Dreamforce is massive. The release notes that we've published for this release is massive as well. And I just wanted to put in a little reminder that these are just some of the features that we've selected that we think are very exciting. Go check out the release notes and see what the full menu of new features is. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit and break off over to Margaret, who's going to tell us about Apache Kafka.
Yeah, it's actually an exciting time to be here. I'm here today to talk about Apache Kafka on Heroku, which will be going GA right in the Dreamforce timeframe, kind of just ahead of the winter release.
Kind of lines up with our release well that way.
Yeah, it's a little on the early side, but the great news is that you'll be able to come again and see more talks about it at Dreamforce. Rand Fitzpatrick, myself, there'll be a number of people who are giving talks all in the developer track at Dreamforce about Heroku this year. And I thought that, for the sake of this particular audience who are all very deep in Lightning content and know all of your subject matter space very well, I would actually pause and give a quick overview of Heroku because Apache Kafka on Heroku is really the newest service from Heroku, but it is by no means the only one. And when we think about servicing developers in the app cloud and really enabling them to work at different levels of abstraction, Heroku is a really critical part of that because it really allows developers of any type, whether they are Node or Java or Python developers, to build apps on the app cloud and to run those apps on Salesforce. And I actually kind of skipped the PowerPoint. I didn't really do much about slides because I wanted to show all of our our watchers, our actual live website. Anyone can sign up for Heroku for free and start experimenting with running their apps on the platform. And that's why, in fact, we have so many different companies who do that today. And it's really a range of customers from, the kind of most innovative, forward-looking, customer-centric, alt-school, lend up, dub smash, charity water types of startups, to very enterprise, very sophisticated Salesforce customers like Macy's and Toyota and that kind of thing that actually use Heroku as a runtime environment for bespoke code that they've deployed via a source control system. So, as I mentioned in the intro, I'm a product manager that works specifically on data and on the Heroku ecosystem. So the Heroku Postgres service, the Heroku Redis service, Heroku Connect, and in working with all of the great partners we have that bring developer tools, developer services to people who are running apps inside the App Cloud on Heroku. There's a pretty enormous roster of terrific partners to work with. And we have a lot of resources out there for those developers. So for any of you who today think, wow, Apache Kafka on Heroku, that's fantastic. I'd love to experiment with it. I have something I need to get done right now. We actually have services and information like our blog, like our dev center, like our informational pages about our individual services that people can really take advantage of today. So that was kind of the quick harbor cruise of Heroku and how it fits into the larger App Cloud story.
That is a harbor cruise. I mean, there's so much underneath the water there that you didn't have a chance to talk about. But it's no problem. Like Margaret said, it's free. Go sign up and start playing with all the different things.
Yeah, I think people are sometimes surprised at the depth of the developer offerings that we have here inside of App Cloud. And one thing I just wanted to note was, even in addition to everything we have on all of the Heroku properties, we actually have some really great Trailhead modules as well. So there's tons. If you just search for Heroku on Trailhead, you will find a lot of modules that really speak to a Salesforce developer who's used to working with Apex, who's used to working with Sockle, and is maybe needing to use more programmatic approaches to fulfill a certain use case. So there's some very good modules there to get people started. So now to Apache Kafka on Heroku. Is this a project that you were really familiar with, Dave, before you heard about it from all of us?
No, not really.
Okay, well I should pause then and talk a little bit about why Apache Kafka is so important as an open source project. Before I came to Salesforce, I was actually working at a place where we handled a lot of high volume social data. And we took kind of old web application architecture approaches to handling it. We wrote it into a Postgres database and it slowed down and the queries got very slow. And we had to try and figure out how to sort of make transactions faster and speed the queries up and shard the database. And it was very clear that this was a bad approach to handling this volume of data for the purposes that we needed it for. And Apache Kafka was really born at LinkedIn, and it is in fact used as a service by a number of very forward-looking tech companies that all of us work with every day. Could be Facebook, could be Salesforce, could be LinkedIn. And it is in fact an open source project. It's been around for years. It's a highly distributed commit log. It's very, very fault tolerant. So you can write just an enormous amount of data into a distributed Kafka cluster, be really sure that those messages have arrived, and then independently create what are effectively consumers or subscribers of different slices of data on that distributed system that can all act in parallel and scale out really nearly indefinitely. It's a very, very powerful technology. And Heroku is bringing it to developers everywhere as a managed service. And this is important because it took months, honestly, for my last dev team and I, this is a couple of years ago, to get it up and running and stable and to use it to handle high volume Twitter data. And now it's going to be like this.
Why was it so hard? What about that whole thing made it so complex?
Well, I think that there's always a learning curve in getting to know a new technology and deploying it and using it in production. And frankly, the Zookeeper service that actually handles the distribution of messages to different nodes inside of the cluster is a little bit of a pain to operate in a production stance. So I mean, Heroku runs, I think, the largest fleet of Postgres databases in the world. We have a lot of experience with operating services at scale. So this is taking this technology that previously would take developers weeks or months to get stood up in their own environment and really operating it as a service on their behalf, so they can innovate faster. And that's so consistent with everything we try to do, here in App Cloud. So
when we think of just our world today, connected people, connected devices, Internet of Things, right? This is really how we can start to leverage, the App Cloud at Salesforce as an overall platform, leveraging Heroku and leveraging the, Kafka service for Heroku to really ingest all that data and then start to have insights and really processes all around it, right?
absolutely. And in fact, if you would switch to the slide, Marcus, I think you're on the right one. So that's we could take a quick look at how we actually use this technology inside of Salesforce today. We have many examples, and one of them is the Heroku API. If you think about all of the events that occur on the platform, and I'll show a couple of those in a demo in a second, I might create an app, I might name it after Dave, I might collaborate Dave on that app. All of these things are happening as essentially log lines that can write to this system. And once they're written, I could decide to send Dave an email because he's been collaborated, or I could decide to take an independent action to scale up the app or take some other kind of management function with respect to it. Maybe I'll flag Dave for abuse, something like that. All of these things are how we use Kafka ourselves here at Salesforce. And so all the events come in, we hang discrete services off, and that's exactly how we use it for OpEx, for API, all over the shop, frankly, at Salesforce. I don't think I'm allowed to say all the ways we use it, actually. So let me switch over to a demo and give everyone just a quick sense of what it looks like to create an app and actually provision Kafka as a resource inside it. So this is my personal view of my Heroku dashboard, and it's pretty chatty because I have a lot going on. I have apps that live in teams, which is up to 5 developers that can collaborate on a project together for free. And then I've got organizations, which are a little bit more heavyweight, more controls available there. And it's pretty easy for me to actually go ahead and create an app on Heroku. And I'm going to call this one Dave the Elder, unless, of course, he's beaten me to the punch. Nope, it's still available. I can use that one.
That's not speaking to your age, just your wisdom.
No. I think that's a beer reference.
He likes Pliny the Elder.
Yeah.
I knew what it was. I was just trying to.
And you'll notice now I've created this app. It's called Dave the Elder, and I haven't really deployed any code. I haven't linked up, a GitHub repo or anything like that. But I can actually go in and add a resource like Redis or Postgres, something really pretty quickly. And when I do that, I'm going to be given a choice of, what price point I might want to use. And we really try to keep a range of options here. I'll choose a free one just for the sake of demo today. And when I go ahead and I create that resource, that's exactly how fast it was for me to create an app, a team space where I can connect my source control system and stand up a data store to use in my app. That's how fast it's going to be to provision Kafka, whether you do it via the UI or via the CLI. So I'm going to go show you how to...
Faster than downloading a zip file or inserting a CD.
Yeah, let's not date ourselves. So I'm going to go ahead and...
Too late for that.
Go ahead and just take a look at my list of Heroku apps. And let's see if I can find Dave the Elder up here in all of my chatty bits. There's Dave the Elder right there. This is my app that I just created in our common runtime. And when I go ahead and do this via the command line instead of the UI, we have both options because we like to support developers however they want to work. I'm going to create Heroku Kafka. I'm going to give you a beta standard 0, Dave. And I'm going to call it, oh, you know what? Did I use, I gave you hyphens. This is proof that we're doing this live, people.
Yep.
You'll notice that it's going to go ahead and spin up that cluster. It's going to tell you that it'll be ready in 15 to 45 minutes. It's usually like 5 minutes, but I'll show you kind of what it looks like when it's blank and it's starting out. It's kind of boring. This one's Salesforce Live TV, and I think I created it yesterday just so I would have something that was sort of an empty shell, and we could inspect it and see what it looks like. And what you'll see here is that I've got a Kafka resource. It tells you it's still in beta, and it will for just a few more weeks. It'll specify the version, which is 10.0.1. It's got no topics. I haven't written any data to my giant distributed log system yet, and I haven't set up any consumers. But what Heroku will do is make a series of intelligent choices about the defaults on that cluster in terms of the replication factor, the number of partitions that we assign for every topic, that basically make it a really stable general purpose tool for developers who are getting started with Kafka.
And are those knobs that you can further tune?
They sure are. And I mean, you can, we've tried to remove really silly options, and we'll try to warn you if you do silly things, like if you have a system with 3 nodes in it and you only replicate to 0, that is not a very good use of a system that has strong kind of message delivery guarantees. We would really prefer that you replicate, to 2 or 3 of those nodes, so that in the event that one, falls down, you still actually have access to your data. So let me inspect one that's slightly more interesting. Let's see. This is a cluster that we are using to gather some metrics data. And we'll take a command line look at it, and then we'll take a kind of a dashboard look at it. And you can see that this particular one has 39 topics, and it's got a fair amount of traffic going in and out of the cluster today. So I'm going to go look at it in the command in the UI, just so we can see how pretty it is when you actually want to browse for it. Too many Kafka clusters. This will not be you, most likely right out of the gate. Okay, so this particular cluster has about 11 terabytes of data in it, and you can see here, we're only retaining this data for a day. We actually reprocess it, and we get some aggregate metrics data out of it. We store that in a Postgres database, and then we just toss this ephemeral high-volume streaming data on the ground, and we're done. We have a replication factor of 3, and we have 32 partitions on this topic. And here is a list of all of the topics that I, in fact, have in this cluster, where a topic is simply a way to categorize an incoming message that I write to the system, and then retrieve it with a consumer. So I actually thought I would show you a short application if we have time.
Yeah, we do. I
okay.
just wanted to make one comment about this. I think that seeing this dashboard view of it actually allows me to imagine how you might use this in an Internet of Things, a world where there's so many inputs coming in, and the size of volume that you can actually handle, and then the strategies around what do I do with that data, how much do I keep, how much do I let go.
Right.
It kind of like, oh, okay, I see a way forward with that whole thing.
Yes, I mean, things that were very clever for us to do with certain kinds of architectures 5 years ago have become less clever when we're dealing with very high volumes of events that may or may not be generated by things, by systems, by people. So Kafka is absolutely a technology that we're going to see adopted more and more by the developer community in terms of architecting an event-driven app with discrete services and consumers hanging off of it, instead of having to kind of just make a bigger, better, faster relational store, though we have those.
So yeah, you wanted to show us a demo? Please.
Yeah, I'll show you something that's really interesting here. This is from one of our developer evangelists, Chris Castle. He'll be at Dreamforce doing a session on this as well, so plenty of talent to come visit in San Francisco this year. And what you're seeing is a web app that just displays a bunch of streaming tweets. So as these tweets are published, in fact, if you publish one right now and you use a keyword like Ruby or Python or Java or Node, you have about a 1% chance that it's going to show up in this stream, because Twitter only gives us about 1% if you're just using like a developer API key as opposed to like a big enterprise license, but you feel free to try out there if you want. They're streaming by in near real time. This is a Kafka consumer service that is hanging off a cluster that has a whole bunch of tweets being produced to it by Twitter. And in fact, when we actually go in and look at the source of all of these tweets, I'm going to go in and look for info on this particular cluster. This is called my Kafka tweet producer cluster. Oops, we'll skip to the next bit then.
So it looks like Heroku is just doing what Heroku does best, which is to take technology that developers are really excited about and apply it in a production setting and make it available really easily and with basically all the trial and error taken out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've really hardened this for operation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the magic of it, because really running these services when they're under load, it's hard. So let me just note here, I actually just went in and tailed the output from this particular Kafka cluster. And you can see here I have a whole bunch of tweets now kind of flowing by. These are the events that we are writing to that cluster, and then we are consuming them like a byte of Python. All of this is coming out in my consumer here in the web app.
So what you notice is one is scrolling up while the other is scrolling down, but that's the same tweet.
That is absolutely the same tweet.
The one's showing up at the top and the other one's showing up at the
That is absolutely the same tweet. And you know, one thing that we do quite a bit in App Cloud, whether it's through Trailhead or you know, Dreamforce or any other means, is try and make the technology that we're developing really accessible for developers. So there'll be all sorts of demo apps out there that you can check out that will help you get started using Kafka as a service. Apache Kafka on Heroku, which is really what we're going to be launching in that Dreamforce timeframe. It's a very, very, very powerful service, particularly when you're getting into that high volume data case.
Yeah. I can see where it is one of the pieces that you need to really be able to dominate IoT and intelligence and the whole 9 yards of our data tsunami.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will leave the official Dreamforce session shilling for others because frankly, the whole developer track is really good. So it's more a question of where your interests lie and what you need to learn when you come. Then, you know, it might be Lightning Actions, it might be Apache Kafka on Heroku, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Gotta figure out how to make Kafka actions.
Well, that's easy. You create a Lightning component that is going to the Kafka service, much like that web page.
Yeah, there you go.
Web page, you can make a Lightning component.
All right.
Yeah. So Dreamforce, by the way, is the sessions at Dreamforce. We have 280 developer-focused sessions, range across the whole gamut of what we call our platform now, our App Cloud, Heroku technologies, Service Cloud technologies. We even have some early technologies around intelligence that we're going to be putting in front of developers. And so I hope everyone out there gets a chance to go to Dreamforce. We are about out of time, and so I want to thank my guests for participating in this. I hope you found this useful. If not, you can let us know with this survey. You can let us know if we did a good job as well. We always appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining and happy coding.